We have Jonathan Jones joining the program to break down some of the biggest news and notes from over the weekend. We're going to start with this. What Matt Ryan just left off talking about Russell Wilson, quarterback of the week. I want to know what his market is going to be like, because obviously he took the one-year prove-it deal in Pittsburgh to up his contract on the next one. What kind of contract do we expect, and who could some of the suitors be for his talents?
Yeah, Mike, great question. I have no idea what his contract is going to be because I polled about 10 executives around the league last week asking them what they thought his contract would be, and it ranged in terms of average annual value from $10 million, and I think we got up to $35 million. Like, it's a huge difference. That's a massive difference. And so, first of all, we don't know what the structure would be. We also don't know where he's going to be. But let's pretend that, he stays in Pittsburgh because he is going to be a free agent come March. The Pittsburgh Steelers do not negotiate in season. So nothing is going to happen until the conclusion of this season. But this is really a basic supply and demand. You have 6 to 8 teams who won't have the same week 1 starter next year. You have not that many quarterbacks out there. You're going to have Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, who, let's just play like they will be week 1 starters somewhere. We can argue on a different podcast whether they should or not, okay? And then we will have Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, Jacoby Brissett, and Jameis Winston. That's your free agent quarterback crop. And so if Russell keeps putting up the numbers that he did on Sunday, and I don't think that that's really sustainable, but he did look like he's back, right? And so now what does Russ want? Does he want to stay in Pittsburgh? Does he want to maybe help them out in terms of money? I am all for. I think everyone here is all for players getting every bit of money that they can. I will just simply say that Russell Wilson twice was made the Seattle Seahawks highest paid player in franchise history. He was then made the highest paid player in Denver Broncos history. He has career earnings of about $250 million. Maybe he doesn't have to take every single dollar in this next contract at age 37. Just, if he saved enough, he may not have to take every dollar. And so what his contract could look like all depends on what he wants out of his next team. But obviously the Steelers, if things keep going the way they did on Sunday, they absolutely want to retain it.
Yeah, it would be very surprising to me if, one, he even wanted to go elsewhere. Like, the situation he's in obviously plays to his strengths far more than it ever did in Denver. And I think he's seen that, like, hey, if I go to the wrong spot with the wrong OC, this could go south. We obviously paired with Arthur Smith there. I fit his offense perfectly. And they have a roster that's going to be playoff adjacent for a long time. Obviously, when Mike Tomlin's your head coach, that's always going to be the case. So, yeah, I do think Russell stays there. What it's going to be, I agree. I don't think he's going to try to maximize every single dollar. He wants the stability for his end of his career. Do we think, though, some of those other guys could get starting looks elsewhere? Sam Darnold, obviously, no matter how good he plays, I think the Vikings are turning the keys over to J.J. McCarthy next year, so he'll probably be looking for a new home. And then Jameis Winston with the Cleveland Browns obviously has lit up that franchise the past 4 weeks, leading the NFL now in yards per game over that span. Do we think either of those two guys get starting looks elsewhere, and where that could be?
Yeah, I think they have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Just numbers game-wise, they have to.
I think that they absolutely have to, right? Like, there's not enough. It's like a game of musical chairs, right? Mm-hmm. There's going to be, there's going to be the Raiders, and there's going to be the Giants. You're going to have the Browns. It appears that Bryce Young is establishing and solidifying himself as that 2025 Week 1 starter. There's still a month of the season left to play, but clearly the arrow is pointed up there. With the Rams, does Matthew Stafford retire? Because I think we're now entering every year, like, we're going to have to deal with that question, right? You can continue on around the league, but again, I said 6 to 8. You go ahead and you have 2 Week 1 rookie quarterbacks, so now we have 4 to 6. You're going to have Russell perhaps staying in Pittsburgh. Let's play that out. So, Daniel Jones is probably going to go somewhere similar to a Sam Darnold contract. Remember, he barely played last year for the Niners. He goes to Minnesota, They hadn't drafted J.J. McCarthy. We didn't know if they were going to draft J.J. McCarthy, but he went as a backup on a one-year, $10 million deal. So can you guess that Daniel Jones might get something like that, right, with some incentives, with some upside, perhaps? And then Sam Darnold has played himself into an NFL middle-class salary, right, somewhere in that $25 million that we saw with Geno Smith and the Seahawks. Up to 33 with Baker. That might be a little high, but that's the new NFL quarterback middle class.
All right, let's move on to Kyle's Bears here.
Middle class. That's a nice middle class to be in there. That's a nice little white picket fence neighborhood to be in there, bud.
Let's move on to the Bears, who fired Matt Eberflus on Friday. Kyle, I want to start with your takes, Kyle, before we get to JJ here. Initial thoughts. Let's hear it.
My initial thoughts are this should have happened last year. I wonder what the record of the Chicago Bears team would have been had they done the no-brainer and hired Jim Harbaugh, former quarterback of the Chicago Bears, to be the culture changer, leader of men, rah-rah, riskumba guy. Like, they would win a lot of games. They lost a game because of ineptitude at the head coaching position, which led to a skid of 6 straight losses and an implosion at Hallis Hall. It is a shame what has transpired. The good news for the Bears, the great news is Caleb Williams is him. Caleb Williams is him. And I think whether it's a defensive guy or an offensive guy, here's my strongest take. You fire the head coach, you can't retain any staff members from the old regime. And stick with me here. I know there's a lot of people that say, but I love Thomas Brown too, dude. He's got juice. He's got aura. Caleb Williams has looked the part under his tutelage. But I think he benefits from having all these different offensive coordinators, not immediately, but his full understanding, his perspective, his different perspectives, taking a look at the football from different angles will benefit him in the long run. And I think people don't need to be so nearsighted and understand that over the course of the next 10 years, we could be looking at a Chicago Bears team that could win a Super Bowl because of this Caleb Williams guy. You need to get the head coach right. Obviously, there's a lot of candidates out there, and me and JJ have talked at length about this on Sundays for the last couple of years, honestly. But the reality is this. If you fire your head coach, you can't retain any staff members. I've been a part of this thing before, and there's a stench on the guys that are left over from the previous administration, regardless of how good they are.
So, JJ, who are the top candidates right now for the Chicago Bears to replace that head coach opening?
Okay, so what I wrote for Sunday morning is not necessarily getting into the top candidates, because as of Sunday morning, I actually truly and really do believe that the Bears did not have a list of guys that they know they are going to put requests in to interview, right? That process, this is a very thorough process that they're going to undergo. It's thorough. I mean, if you don't believe me, take a look at how long it took them to fire Matt Eberflus and why they let him go do that press conference over Zoom, because they were in the process of something that, frankly, we all knew as soon as that ball hit the ground from Caleb Williams to Rome Odunze that they were going to fire Matt Eberflus, that he wasn't going to coach the San Francisco 49ers game, right? So they haven't gotten into that, okay? But I do know that they want a leader of men. And I know that some people, because I've seen this over the past 30 hours, ever since I reported that people were questioning what that means. I don't think any player questions what that means. I don't think anyone who is around ball should question what that means. If you are, you're being intentionally obtuse, right? Going back to Kyle's point, Jim Harbaugh, no question about it. Dan Campbell, no question about it. Mike Tomlin, right? The list continues. DeMeco Ryans. It doesn't matter what your background is, right? It matters about how you can lead these guys. And so a Mike Vrabel, a Brian Flores, an Aaron Glenn. I even reported Marcus Freeman with Notre Dame, who was drafted by the Bears. All of these guys could potentially fit the mold for Chicago.
No, JJ, one thing. Mike, one thing. Marcus Freeman, stay at Notre Dame. Stay at Notre Dame. I want an NFL guy. My only concern about the guy that everybody in Chicago wants, Ben Johnson, is that the real leader of men in that locker room is Dan Campbell. His plate is less full. Ben Johnson's plate is less full. He worries about offense. He gets to be a genius in that regard. You become a head coach, now there are multiple more chapters in your daily to-do list. So I have questions about that. Go get a leader of men, like JJ says. Mike Vrabel, I'll buy you a house in Lake Forest, dude. You just, come on, let's go.